The contents of this presentation is mainly based upon my book, The Strategic Project Leader, Mastering Service-Based Project Leadership. Wrote the book back in 2007, or the first edition was out. The second edition will actually be out later this year, probably in the September-October timeframe. It's available on Amazon, PMI Bookstore, and at my website, myprojectadvisor.com. So let's start with a very basic question. Tom Peters has a history of going around in his presentation saying, distinguished project work is the future of work, for the simple reason that more than 90% of white-collar jobs are in jeopardy today. They are in the process of being transformed beyond identification or completely eliminated. What this really asks the question is are we as project managers at risk? And particularly over the last 4 or 5 years in the Great Recession that we've been through, a lot of the jobs that have been lost have not come back, and there's a lot of talk about the slow economic recovery. And many of that is because what I think Tom Peters has talked about is that many of our white-collar jobs have been transformed through technology or have been moved to different parts of the world, and they have been transformed or completely eliminated. So the question really for us is, are we at risk, and have we perceived or have we experienced any of this in our own careers? The answer to that question, if we ponder it a little bit, lies a little bit in this slide. And if you don't mind, I'll tell a little story. About a dozen years ago, the scientists at NASA, Goddard Space Center outside of Washington, D.C., they got real excited because they were able to confirm a theory that they had had for numerous years. And they were able to get these pictures back from the Hubble telescope of these exploding galaxies, million light years away from us. And this was, they have never dreamt being able to get pictures of something this far away. And what these pictures unveiled to them was that their theory of that everything in the universe at an atomic level is moving away from each other at an ever-increasing rate. So in other words, that at an atomic level, particles are essentially moving away from each other. And what the scientists called this, or their theory was that there's this mysterious dark force in the universe that they refer to as dark energy. And this dark energy is what they termed it, and it essentially was proven through the context of these photos that were received from the Hubble telescope. Some of you may be saying, well, what does this have to do with project management or project leadership? Well, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where, as a project leader, everyone on your team, your stakeholders, maybe even your sponsors, seem to be moving away from you at an ever-increasing rate. And there you are with lots of accountability, very little authority to be able to deliver this project. So if you do have one of those days, then I would say feel free to blame it on the universal principles of dark energy. That's a bit of a humor, but I do think it does make sense, and it does relate to what we all experience on a regular basis. This energy on our teams can be very, very positive, or also be very negative and drive people away from us. Attitudes do matter. The idea that attitudes matter because attitudes drive behaviors. Richard Jarvinen was a scientist, and he studied NASA in the 1990s, particularly when they were outsourcing a lot of their contract work to major vendors. And he basically, through years and years of observing teams and groups within NASA around the shuttle program, he came back with the conclusion that the prevailing attitude was, if we worry about every little thing, we'll never fly. The idea is that these attitudes drove certain behaviors in teams, behaviors in between workers and program managers and executives. And those attitudes drove behaviors, and those behaviors drive attitudes in other workers. And it's very dynamic, and it's very prevalent that these attitudes and behaviors become contagious. You'll see on the screen here is actually a picture of the Space Shuttle Columbia as it was re-entering the Earth in February of 2003, when you can see the beginning of the destruction of the tail, which ultimately led to its breaking up in the atmosphere over the United States. So the point is that attitudes are important because they do drive behaviors, and those behaviors have real consequences. Discipline and art of project management is going to be the essence of management training, operational excellence, and value added. People skills will increasingly determine an organization's success. Our teams will voluntarily come together to solve complex problems using global resources, essentially replacing the modern-day corporation. And project managers with a knack for people skills will be the glue. I continue to bring this quote back into many of my presentations, even though it's almost 10 years old. But if you look at this, what has essentially happened in our environment? This whole concept of agile has been thrust upon us in many of our organizations. Project managers with a knack for people skills will be the glue. Well, now we have scrum masters, right, who are supposed to be have the facilitation and the knack for people skills to basically run scrums and run agile teams. Teams will voluntarily come together to solve complex problems. Many of us who might be familiar with agile or various agile methodologies is that there's this whole concept of self-organization. So even though there may not be a project manager role defined in some of these key processes, these concepts are actually happening and have continued to accelerate over the last 10 years. But project manager, somebody in a leadership role has to facilitate this, and there's still this need for leadership within teams. So as PMPs, right, we're here trying to get some PDUs. What is our roadmap, right? Should we be focused on building the best PMO and structure and templates and providing the highest or the lowest price for a basic service, or should we be focused on entrepreneurship, creativity, professionalism? Well, again, what's happened over the last 10 years? PMOs have basically been remaking themselves over the past several years. There's been many things written about it, and it's all about what? Agility, strategic agility, flexibility, versatility. So this whole idea of structures and templates and lowest price for a basic service has basically been proven to be pretty ineffective in an environment where most organizations have a high velocity or high rate of change. And what's needed is competency in our leaders, competency in our teams, to have creativity, to have professionalism, to have a level of entrepreneurship to solve problems and create valuable products and services for our customers. So let's start with a very basic question here. What is a project, and what is our customer perspective of this project? I think this is what leads us to get to our 3 leadership competencies that we need to get more out of our PMP. First of all, we know on the left-hand side here, these are sort of the basic things. If we open up any project management textbook, we will see. We know a project is unique. It has a need or a problem statement. It hasn't been done before, okay? These things require, from a customer perspective, a level of advice and recommendations. Think of the last time you as a customer, maybe you remodeled your kitchen. Maybe you were settling an estate for a family member. These might have been things that were unique, had a problem or need statement, hadn't been done before, and you needed some level of advice and recommendations to get through this, whether it was from a contractor or an attorney or some other professional service provider, because you were not the expert